This is the continuation of Winnie Hargrove's story. If you haven't watched the first part, stop right now because you won't understand what's going on. This story picks up exactly where the previous part ended. You can find the first part in the pinned comment below this video. Please pay attention to the thumbnail to make sure you're watching the correct story, as our channel features many two-part stories. In this next part, Winnie will reveal the secrets that unfolded inside that mansion. You'll be shocked and amazed. Don't miss a single moment of this video, because every word Winnie says is crucial to understanding the context of the events in her life. Leave a like now so you don't forget later while you're immersed in the story. Now, Winnie, we're ready to hear you once again.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
My dear, when you asked me to continue the story, I had stopped at the moment I visited my mother and tried to convince her to come live with us at the mansion, remember? Let me tell you what happened next. As I mentioned earlier, when I told Mother about the good life she and my younger brother would have if they lived with me, I saw joy, a sparkle, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But then she shook her head. "I can't, daughter," she said, her voice full of sadness and reality. "It's not because of your father. It's that your siblings need me, you know. They're just starting their lives now. I help by taking care of the children when they go to work. I love my little grandchildren. Many of them are too young for daycare, and your siblings can't afford a nanny." I tried to argue, said she needed to take care of herself first, that we could find a way to help the others later. But my mother was determined. "This is my place, daughter. I can't leave." I felt my heart tighten. I wanted so badly to get her out of there, to give her a better life. But I understood my mother. She always put others before herself. Thaddeus, who had been quiet until then, approached. "Mrs. Meredith," he said gently, "I respect your decision, but you need to know you have options, that you don't need to live like this if you don't want to." My mother smiled sadly. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You're a good man." I realized there was no use insisting, but I couldn't leave without doing something. That's when I had an idea. "Mom," I said, taking a piece of paper and a pen, "I'll leave the telephone number of the estate with you. Hide it from Dad. If you ever need help, just call." My mother took the paper as if it were a treasure. "Thank you, daughter." The time to leave came too quickly. I decided not to visit my siblings' houses since Mom said they were all working. I hugged my mother tightly, not wanting to let go. "Take care, Mom," I whispered in her ear. Mom held my hands and looked at me and Thaddeus. There was a mixture of sadness and hope in her eyes when she said something that caught me by surprise. "Daughter, don't worry. If it's God's will, you'll hold a baby in your arms soon." I felt my heart tighten. Those words, spoken with such affection, deeply saddened me. My mother had no idea about our arrangement, our marriage of appearances. She truly believed that Thaddeus and I were trying to have a child. I looked at Thaddeus, not knowing what to say. He also seemed uncomfortable, but maintained his composure. I forced a smile for my mother, trying to hide the pain I felt. "Amen, Mom," was all I could say. That moment made me realize how complicated our situation was. It wasn't just about me and Thaddeus. It was about expectations, well-intentioned lies, about dreams that would never come true. When we left my parents' house, I carried with me not only concern about my mother's situation, but also the weight of that unsolicited blessing. On the way back to the estate, I was quiet, thinking about everything. Thaddeus respected my silence. After that visit, I didn't feel the same. That happy, contented Winnie had been left behind. I struggled with my thoughts and stayed that way for almost a month. Thaddeus was noticing everything. We who always talked before sleeping, now I just turned in bed and pretended to be asleep. Most times I wasn't even sleepy. I just didn't want to talk. One day Thaddeus couldn't take it anymore. I remember I had just finished bathing, came out of the bathroom with my flowered robe that Mrs. Gwendoline had given me for Christmas. Such a beautiful thing. It was at that moment, my God, I was so startled. He had never seen me like that, just in a robe. Normally, I was always very proper in my closed nightgown. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands crossed, looking at me in that serious way of his. "Winnie," he said softly, "I want a child in this house." I looked at him. "My lord, what do you mean, Thaddeus? Are you going to be with me?" He shook his head, his eyes full of sadness. "I can't, Winnie. You'll have to have the child with another man. Get pregnant by another man, and we'll say it's mine. It's ours." I felt my blood boil in my veins. I was furious. How could he propose such an absurdity? "Never!" I shouted. "I will not accept such indecency. If it's not with you, who is my husband? I don't want it." I don't know what came over me at that moment. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was the frustration of all those years. In an impulse, I took off my robe, letting it fall to the floor. I stood there in front of Thaddeus with nothing covering my body. His eyes widened. "Is it not possible that you find me so ugly that you don't want me?" I said angrily. "I understand that before I was a child, but now I'm a woman, Thaddeus. Don't you see?" He couldn't stop looking at me, at my body. And do you know what his reaction was, my child? It was to run from the room, just like that, without saying a word. He turned and left. I stood there, frozen. After a few minutes, I realized what I had done. My God, what shame. I put on a cotton nightgown and threw myself on the bed. I cried so much that night, from shame, from humiliation, from sadness. Thaddeus didn't return to the bedroom. It was the first time we slept apart. The next day, he left very early for work. We didn't see each other all day. I spent the day wandering around the house like a lost soul. I helped Mrs. Gwendoline in the kitchen, tried to read a book, but nothing took that scene out of my head. At night, when Thaddeus returned, I thought he would avoid me again, but no. He entered our bedroom where I was sitting on the bed, trembling with nervousness. "Winnie," he said in a soft voice, "we need to talk." He sat in the chair near the window. He was wearing a grey suit, the one he always wore when handling business in town. He must have spent the day there. "I'm sorry, Père," he began. "I shouldn't have proposed that. It was wrong of me." I felt tears returning to my eyes. "I also apologize. I shouldn't have acted that way." He shook his head. "You did nothing wrong, Winnie. It's me who... Well, things are complicated." We sat in silence for a while, me on the bed with trembling hands in my lap, him in the chair looking out the window as if the answers to everything were out there. "Winnie," he said after a while, "you are a beautiful woman." He paused, lost in his thoughts, then continued, "Very beautiful indeed, and you deserve to be truly loved. I can't give you that." I felt my heart tighten. "Why, Thaddeus, what happened to you? I want to help you. You know I can keep a secret." He sighed deeply. "It's a long story, Winnie, one that I don't know if I'm ready to tell." That night, we didn't talk anymore, but something had changed between us. In the days that followed, things slowly returned to normal. We started talking again, playing chess at night, but there was something different in the air. A silent understanding, an intimacy we didn't have before. When I turned 17, I could no longer lie to myself. I had fallen in love with Thaddeus. It wasn't just that gratitude of a girl anymore. It was a woman's love. My heart raced when he came home from work. I counted the hours until we could play chess at night to hear his voice saying anything to me. I think he noticed. How could he not? My eyes must have betrayed me every time he entered the room, but he never said anything, pretended not to see. It was during one of these times, after much thought, that I decided to provoke him. We were playing chess as usual when I blurted out, "Remember that time you wanted me to get pregnant by another man?" I saw him tense up, his hand frozen in the air holding a piece, looking at my face. "Now I want to," I continued, my heart beating so hard I thought he could hear it. "But I don't know anyone. You need to arrange everything." Thaddeus looked at me in a way I had never seen before. I think he was shocked by what he had just heard, a subject that was already buried for us. "I've noticed how you used to look at Jedediah, Mrs. Gwendoline's nephew, when you first came here," he said, in a low, controlled voice. I felt as if I had been slapped. I was stunned. I didn't even remember Jedediah anymore. It had been so long since I had looked at him. Had Thaddeus noticed this? Did he observe me that closely? "Jedediah," I managed to stammer. "But he's engaged. Mrs. Gwendoline told me." Thaddeus shrugged as if that didn't matter. The next day, he sent for Jedediah to come to his office. I was sad. That wasn't my objective at all, I swear to God. I wanted him to feel jealous, to realize that I was there. But I pretended not to know anything, though inside I was burning with anxiety. The meeting took forever. I hung around near the office, then hid in embarrassment at what I was doing. When Jedediah came out, he didn't even look in my direction. That night, Thaddeus called me to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. "I talked with Jedediah," he said, his voice emotionless. "I offered him money to lie with you just once." I felt my stomach turn. So it was real then. He had really done this. "And?" I asked, barely able to speak. "He accepted," Thaddeus answered, still not looking at me. "He needs the money but demanded absolute secrecy. He doesn't want to lose his fiancée. Says he loves her very much." I stood there, not knowing what to say, what I had done, why I had provoked that situation. I began to ask, but my voice failed. "I'll let you know, Winnie," Thaddeus responded, finally looking at me. "Thaddeus," I said, my voice trembling, "why are you doing this?" He got up from the bed, walked to the window, stood for a while looking outside into the darkness of the night. I went to the bathroom. The bath water fell over me, but I couldn't clean myself. I scrubbed my skin with the loofah so hard it turned red, but the feeling of dirt wouldn't go away. When I left the bathroom, I saw Thaddeus taking that nightgown to burn. It was as if he wanted to erase all evidence of what had happened. He returned to the bedroom and lay down. Nobody said anything. I took my prayer beads, the ones my mother had given me, and began to pray softly, crying and praying. I know he heard. How could he not? The bed was large, but at that moment it seemed too small for the size of the hurt that was between us. Each time I sniffled, I felt his body tense on the other side of the bed. At that moment, my child, I hated that man. I hated him with all my strength. I hated him for putting me in that situation, for planning all that, for forcing me to do something I didn't want to do. But the worst of all is that I also hated myself. I hated myself for suggesting that absurdity. And I also thought, am I pregnant? And if I'm not, will I have to do this again? Well, after all that, I lost the will to live. I didn't even want to look at Thaddeus's face. When he spoke to me, I responded only what was necessary without even raising my eyes. Even the employees of the estate noticed that something was wrong. Mrs. Gwendoline was always asking me, "Are you feeling well, Mrs. Blackwood? How is your health?" More than a month passed and I remained the same way. Nothing changed. One day, out of nowhere, Thaddeus came to hug me. He was begging for my forgiveness, saying he wanted to talk like we used to in the old days. But I completely ignored him. I was afraid of him wanting to be friends again and leading me to that situation one more time. So I gave no chance for closeness. That's when he started bringing me gifts. They were beautiful things, even a pearl necklace that must have cost a fortune. Other presents he brought in boxes, but I didn't even open them. I left everything where he put it. By this time, I had realized I wasn't pregnant at all, thank God. The truth is, if it wasn't by my husband, I preferred never to be a mother. Time passed and the pawpaw trees in the orchard became loaded with fruit and then bare again. The mangoes began to ripen and there I was, living without living. Until one day, Thaddeus made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He asked if I wanted to learn to drive. At first, I pretended that I didn't want to. Imagine, a woman driving. In fact, I had never seen this. It could exist, of course, but my eyes had never seen it. So I ended up accepting, and look, it was the best thing I could have done. It was very good, you know. At the beginning, I didn't smile, just listened to his commands, and did what he told me. Thaddeus had bought a Cadillac, synonymous with absolute luxury. Cadillacs were imported and used by the economic and political elite of the country. It was quite a car, with that engine that roared strongly and the leather seats that creaked when we sat down. Actually, Thaddeus had trucks, even a tractor that he drove, but the Cadillac was our touring car, for going to town, for traveling. The first lessons were right there in the yard of the estate. I was cold just thinking about handling that enormous steering wheel. Thaddeus explained everything to me with patience. This here is the accelerator, this is the brake. To start, you turn the key and step on the clutch. At the beginning, the car kept stalling. I was embarrassed, but Thaddeus never lost his calm. When I realized it, I was talking to him again, and there were such situations in that car, only God knows. The estate was very large, so there was plenty of space for me to make every blunder at that wheel. Once I almost ran over a brood of chicks that Mrs. Hazel, the housekeeper, was raising. Another time I drove the car into a mud hole, and we needed to call the farmhands to push it out. There was a day when I was so excited that I didn't see the pasture fence and hit it head-on, knocking down about 3 fence posts. All the cattle escaped, and there was such a rush to gather them back. Thaddeus, instead of scolding me, laughed. It was the first time I had seen him smile in so long. Despite scratching the car all over, he didn't seem to be worried about it. The lessons were changing things between us, very slowly. We started to talk about other things besides the car. He told me about the news from the estate, the coffee negotiations, the problems with pests in the plantation. I became interested again, giving my opinion here and there. Little by little, I began to feel lighter. The fear I had of Thaddeus diminished. I began to notice that he was also suffering from everything that had happened. I saw the deep circles under his eyes, the way he sometimes stared at nothing with a sad face. Tell me, my child, your opinion is very important to me. Would you have forgiven Thaddeus, or do you think I was very foolish? One Saturday afternoon, after a driving lesson, we stopped the car near the stream that runs through the estate. We stayed there listening to the water running and the birds singing. My heart was beating fast without really knowing why. It was then that Thaddeus held my hand and said, "Winnie, I know I did a horrible thing. I don't even know if you'll ever be able to truly forgive me, but I want you to know that I bitterly regret it." I just listened and didn't say anything. I held his hand with such affection that when I realized it, I had noticed that I still liked him. I decided to get closer and tried to kiss his mouth, and to my surprise, he didn't run away like the other times. So we kissed. I felt my body tingle. What a nice kiss. I didn't know it was so good. It was my first kiss at 17 years old with my husband, who had already lived and slept with me for more than 3 years. After that kiss, I looked at Thaddeus and saw his eyes filling with tears. He said he shouldn't have done that and asked me to drive back home. I had never seen that big man cry before. Not understanding anything, we went back. I drove well by this time, but my head was a complete confusion. How could it be? He accepted my kiss. Could it be that he also liked me in the same way that I liked him? That night, the bedroom was pitch black. Thaddeus and I were lying down, each on our side of the bed, as always. All day he hadn't spoken to me. I knew it was because of that kiss. Suddenly I heard Thaddeus's voice, cutting through the silence. "Winnie, are you awake? I need to tell you something." I made a small so he would know I was listening. I stayed very quiet, waiting. "I can't be with you," he said, his voice trembling a little. "I made a promise to my late wife on her deathbed." I felt a jolt in my chest. Finally, Thaddeus was going to tell me what was really happening. Thaddeus continued speaking. "Evangelina and I grew up together. We loved each other since we were children. She was the daughter of the foreman on my father's farm. When we grew up, in our youth, I went to her parents' house to offer a dowry. My father didn't want it because she was poor, but he ended up accepting. I imagined young Thaddeus all dressed up, going to ask for the girl's hand. In those days, that's how it was. The dowry was to show that the bride would have a good future. Her father was a good man, Thaddeus said. He accepted right away." I could hear a sad little smile in his voice. "We lived an intense love, Winnie. We swore to stay together as the priest said at the altar, in sickness and in health, till death do us part." I confess, I felt a twinge of jealousy. I had never known a love like that. My marriage to Thaddeus was arranged, like so many others in that time. But hearing him talk about Evangeline, I could see how much he truly loved that woman. "We had our children," Thaddeus continued. "Evangeline was a good mother, a good wife. But in her third pregnancy, she became ill." His voice trembled a little. You could feel the pain in his words, even after so much time. "The doctor said it was pregnancy diabetes. It was very dangerous. She needed to rest most of the time, lying down, but on the day of delivery, which came early, at only 6 months, there wasn't time to do anything." Thaddeus paused for a moment. I stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. I could hear his heavy breathing in the dark. "I had to help," he said, almost in a whisper. "I called Mrs. Gillian, who worked in the house, but she had never delivered a baby either. While Silas went to get the midwife, the two of us tried to deliver the baby." I could imagine the scene as he described it, the room full of distress, Evangeline screaming in pain, Thaddeus and Mrs. Gillian trying to help without really knowing what to do. What anguish, what suffering. And you know, this was so common in those days, especially in rural areas where doctors were few and midwives didn't always arrive in time. Thaddeus continued speaking. "When I took my son in my arms, he was already purple, Winnie, lifeless. I tried everything to make him breathe. I tried with all my strength." I felt his voice getting higher. He was swallowing his tears to be able to continue, and I had a lump in my throat. Mrs. Gillian, who was helping me, saw that Evangelina was fainting. It was there, between her waking up and fainting again, that I promised that I would never be with another woman in my life. In fact, I was just affirming the promise I had already made long before, when we were just 2 children. Silence returned to the room, heavy. I didn't know what to say. Everything made sense now. He was just following the custom of remarrying. When he married me, he was a man of his word, carrying the weight of a promise made in a moment of desperation and pain. "I'm sorry, Thaddeus," was all I could say softly. I heard him move in the bed. "Now you understand, Winnie, why I can't, why we can't." I nodded, even knowing he couldn't see in the dark. I did understand. I understood the weight of that promise, the pain that Thaddeus had carried all these years. But I also knew that that kiss, that moment of ours, had changed something between us. I stretched out my hand in the dark and found his. I squeezed it lightly. It was a simple gesture, but full of understanding. That night, we didn't speak anymore. We just stayed there in the silence, thinking about everything that had been confessed. I kept remembering how different it was in my house. My father never spoke of love with my mother. Everything was based on orders and fear. Seeing Thaddeus cry for a woman he had loved so much made me think that perhaps there existed a type of love that I had never known between a man and a woman. The rooster crowed outside, announcing another day. It was Sunday, and I had another day off with Thaddeus before the demanding routine he faced on weekdays, when life on the estate would continue with all its work. But something had changed forever between Thaddeus and me. My child, after everything that Thaddeus told me, I had an idea that had never crossed my mind before. I decided to make breakfast for us and bring it to bed. I went down to the kitchen, stepping like a cat so as not to make noise. Mrs. Gwendoline hadn't arrived yet, so I lit the wood stove myself and put the water to boil. While waiting, I arranged a beautiful tray that we only used when we had important visitors. I put on it the best things we had already made, only the coffee I brewed fresh. When I went up the stairs with the tray, Thaddeus was already up or almost leaving the room, but when he saw me coming in with that tray, his eyes lit up and he decided to stay. "Winnie," he said, his voice full of surprise. "It's just breakfast," I answered, feeling my face warm. "I thought we could eat here today." We sat on the bed, and as we ate, I gathered courage and asked what was burning inside me. "Thaddeus, why did you accept my kiss yesterday? And the promise you made to Evangeline?" He looked at me for a while, as if thinking carefully about what he was going to say. And it was there, my child, that what I can call a great love began. "Winnie," he began in a low voice, "I love you. I've known this for a long time, but I was trying to keep my promise. But after that time with Jedediah," he paused as if it were difficult to speak. "I bitterly regretted it even before the sun rose. I was afraid you would get pregnant by him." I sat there listening to all this, amazed. "When time passed and I saw you weren't pregnant," he continued, "I realized that God had given me another chance. I tried to get closer, wanted to tell you all this, my feelings, but you never gave me the opportunity." At that moment, it seemed like I was dreaming, Thaddeus declaring himself, saying he loved me. He came closer, as if he were going to kiss me, but I was holding the coffee cup and my hands were trembling a lot. I spilled everything on him. My goodness, the coffee was so hot, and Thaddeus's chest got all red. "Mercy!" I shouted, trying to clean it with the napkin, but it didn't help at all. "I'd better take a bath," he said, getting up. I stayed there not knowing what to do, but then I don't know what courage came over me. I followed him into the bathroom. I entered quietly as if I didn't want anything, and he was there, my child, under that water that we gave in to passion. We spent the whole day in that room. Later, when we talked about what happened with Jedediah, Thaddeus confessed that arranging that encounter was his misguided way of trying to give me what he thought I deserved, a child and a normal family. He hadn't realized how deeply his feelings for me had grown until he was faced with the reality of sharing me with another man. I don't even remember if anyone came to knock on the door, if Mrs. Gwendoline was worried. I only know it was one of the most important days of my life. You know, in those days, it wasn't common for a woman to take the initiative like that. We were raised to be modest, to wait for the men to do everything, but that day I felt it had to be different, and thank God it was. Poor Thaddeus had the mark of the coffee burn for quite a while. Every time I saw it, I would give a little laugh about that day. He pretended to be angry, but then laughed too. After that day, my child, things changed like night and day at the estate. It was as if we had discovered a new world, full of joy and love. Thaddeus and I, we couldn't stay apart anymore. Every blessed day, I would wait for him to return from work there, on the porch of Blackwood Manor, my heart beating hastily just thinking that soon I would be alone with him. I remember once while we were sitting on the porch swing that Thaddeus had put up for his grandchildren, he said to me, "Winnie, thank God I gave love another chance. You've brought life to this estate, to my life." I was so moved I almost fell off the swing. We invented all sorts of things, you know. There was a day we went to bathe in the stream that runs through the estate. Yes, that same one where our first kiss happened. It was a hidden place, full of trees around. Thaddeus, all embarrassed at first, ended up getting in the water with me after he saw that I went in naked. We laughed like two mischievous children, splashing water and stealing kisses. And his Cadillac, my goodness, became our secret spot. Thaddeus would park it in a secluded place on the estate where no one could see. Inside, we would court as if the outside world didn't exist. I had such crazy ideas. Once I convinced Thaddeus to have a midnight picnic, just the two of us. We took a basket full of treats that I had made myself, some candles, and went to the lakeside. We lay there on a blanket, looking at the stars and talking until the sun rose. Thaddeus always said that I had a youthful freshness that was contagious. He said I made him feel young again, full of life and desire to enjoy every moment. And look, he went along with all my ideas. There were times when we went out on horseback in the middle of the night just to see the sunrise from the top of the hill. Our life became a great adventure, full of sweet moments and discoveries. Each day was a new surprise. Sometimes it was just coffee in bed. Other times it was a car ride with no particular destination. The important thing was that we were together, learning to love in a way I never imagined existed. You know, my child, in those days, it wasn't common for a couple to be so united, especially with such an age difference. But Thaddeus and I, we didn't care what others thought. We had found a happiness that many people spend their whole lives looking for, and we weren't going to let it escape for anything in this world. It was then that Mrs. Gwendoline decided to ask me what my recipe for happiness was. That caught me by surprise. Mrs. Gwendoline had always been so reserved, you know, regarding my intimacy with Thaddeus. But that day she opened her heart to me. She began telling me a bit about her life. She said she had a very happy marriage, the kind that made others envious, just like mine with Thaddeus. Mr. Edmund, her husband, was the foreman at the neighboring farm. The two met at a midsummer festival, and it was love at first sight. They married young and had 3 children, Timmy, Rosie, and Jimmy. That's what she affectionately called her children. Their life was simple but full of joy. Mrs. Gwendoline spoke with shining eyes about how good it was to see the children growing, running around the yard, helping with household chores. But then her voice became choked. She told me that Rosie, the middle child, was the joy of the house, smart, talkative, always singing while helping her mother in the kitchen. She was 12 years old and the bravest of the 3 siblings. She always went with them to play in the stream that cut through the farm. There was a beautiful waterfall there. All the children in the region loved it. On a very hot day, the children went to cool off in the stream, as they always did. Mrs. Gwendoline was at home preparing lunch when she heard the distant screams. She had a bad feeling and ran as fast as she could, but when she got there, it was too late. Rosie had slipped on a rock and hit her head. The brothers tried to save her, but the current was too strong that day. When they finally managed to pull her out of the water, the girl was no longer breathing. Mrs. Gwendoline told me this with tears in her eyes and sobs. I cried a lot too. She said that after that day, nothing was the same. Her husband sank into drinking. He couldn't handle the pain. The boys became quiet, haunted. And she blamed herself for not going along, for not protecting her little girl. You know, Mrs. Blackwood, she said to me, we never forget, but we learn to carry it. It's like a scar. It hurts less with time, but it's always there to remind us. The marriage slowly fell apart. Mr. Quentin drank more and more, sometimes disappearing for days. Mrs. Gwendoline, who could no longer count on her husband, started looking for work. Until then, she had never worked outside the home. It was at that time that she came to our house. That day she talked with me for a long time. She spoke about Mr. Quentin with a mixture of affection and sadness in her eyes. You know, Mr. Edmund was a strong man, the kind who wasn't afraid of hard work. Before being a foreman, he had been a farmhand. He knew every inch of that land. He was respected by everyone on the neighboring farm, both by the owners and by the other workers. Oh, Mrs. Blackwood, she said to me, Edmund was quite a man. There wasn't a fence he couldn't fix, or a wild animal he couldn't tame. But what I liked most about him was the affectionate way he had with the children. She told me that every day when he returned from work, no matter how tired he was, Mr. Edmund always had energy to play with the children. He would put Timmy on his shoulders, take Rosie by the hand and little Jimmy in his arms, and go out into the yard, inventing adventure stories. Sundays were fishing days. Mr. Edmund would wake up early, prepare the bamboo rods, and take the boys to the stream. Rosie went along but preferred to stay on the bank, collecting flowers and colored pebbles. She couldn't understand how that accident could have happened to her daughter. The girl swam so well from a very young age. Edmund was strict when he needed to be, but he had a soft heart, you know, Mrs. Gwendoline said with a sad smile. When Rosie asked him to tell one more story before bed, he always gave in, even being dead tired. But then came the accident. After Rosie was gone, it seemed that a part of Mr. Edmund died with her. He started drinking to forget the pain. At first, it was just a sip after work. Then it became a bottle. It wasn't long before he started missing work. I tried to help Mrs. Blackwood, Mrs. Gwendoline said to me with a tearful voice. I talked to him, begged, argued, but it seemed like he was deaf to everything and everyone. He only heard the voice of the drink. Over time, Mr. Edmund became violent. He never hit the boys or Mrs. Gwendoline, but he would break things in the house, yell for no reason. There was a time when he disappeared for almost a week. When he returned, he was dirty, bearded, and unrecognizable. It was during this time that Mrs. Gwendoline decided she needed to do something for the boys, for herself. She got the job at our house and left with her children. It was the most difficult decision of my life, she told me. I still loved Edmund, you know, but I couldn't live that way anymore. The boys were scared. I was scared. After she left, she learned that Mr. Edmund had gotten even worse. He lost his job and lived off handouts. People in the region said he had become a wanderer, sleeping anywhere, always with a bottle in his hand. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, Mrs. Gwendoline said to me. If I should have insisted more, stayed by his side. But then I look at my boys, see how they've grown strong and good, and I know I made the right decision. She found out that years later, Mr. Edmund ended up dying in a bar fight. Mrs. Gwendoline cried when she learned this, cried for days. She cried for the man she had loved, for the father of her children, for the life that could have been and wasn't. I was speechless. She held my hand and said, "That's why I'm happy to see you and Mr. Blackwood." Yes, life is too short for us not to enjoy love when it appears. Take good care of this love, Mrs. Blackwood. It's a precious gift. Mr. Blackwood has been through a lot too. He deserves to be happy. That night, after dinner, I told Thaddeus about Mrs. Gwendoline's story. I thought he already knew. He was surprised, his eyes wide. "I didn't know any of this," he said, running his hand over his chin. "Mrs. Gwendoline has always been so discreet. I respect her, but we don't have the intimacy for that kind of conversation." So I said, "But she knows what you've been through, Thaddeus." Thaddeus gave a long sigh, looking at nothing, as if searching for old memories. Certainly it was Mrs. Gillian who told her everything." His voice became different, lower. "Gillian was more than an employee, you know. I brought her from my parents' farm, may God rest their souls. She saw me grow up, knew Evangelina." He paused as if the words were hard to come out. "She saw my boy's born grow up and was even with me at the deathbed. Well, you know the rest." Thaddeus stopped, trying to disguise his emotion. When she retired, Mrs. Gwendoline took her place as the housekeeper. I thought about how life takes its turns. Mrs. Gwendoline carried that silent pain, but even so, she had the strength to take care of us with such affection. She was more than an employee. She was like family, always there, attentive to everything, taking care of the house and us with that quiet, sweet way of hers. It was good to know her story. It made me better understand that sad look I sometimes caught on her face. Now I understood why she took such care of me, so young and married to an older man. Perhaps she saw in me a bit of the daughter she lost, and in Thaddeus, a bit of the husband that life took down other paths. Well, it could just be nonsense in my head. When I think of that time, it seems like it was yesterday. After almost a year, living that beautiful love with Thaddeus, I began to feel some discomfort, morning sickness, a weakness in my body, a lot of sleepiness, things I had never felt before. It was Mrs. Gwendoline, with that experienced look of hers, who discovered I was pregnant. By this time, I had just turned 18 years old. I'll never forget that day. Thaddeus made a point of organizing a small intimate party to celebrate, just for us in the house. He asked Mrs. Gwendoline to prepare everything without telling me. When I entered the dining room after lunch, I almost fell over backward. There were flowers everywhere. Those pink roses I liked so much, picked from our own garden. The table was set with the most beautiful lace tablecloth in the house, the one used only on special occasions. Thaddeus's family silver cutlery was all neatly arranged. Mrs. Gwendoline said she didn't know how to make fancy cakes, so she ordered one from town. In the center of the table was a 3-tiered cake with pink icing, all decorated with sugar flowers. I had never seen such a beautiful cake in my life. It looked like those in magazines. Around it were sweets of all kinds, coconut kisses, chocolate brigadeiros, cashew sweets, and even those married cookies that I loved. The employees arrived little by little, all dressed in their best clothes. Mr. Silas, the foreman, came with his family. His daughter Molly, who was about 7 years old, couldn't take her eyes off the cake. When Thaddeus called me to his side and pulled out a velvet box, inside was a pearl necklace that had belonged to his mother. I was speechless and very touched by such a meaningful gift. It was the first time he had given me something so personal, so important. Thaddeus helped me put on the necklace. His hands trembled a little. "You look as beautiful as a princess, Winnie," he said, adjusting my hair. I noticed his eyes were moist. Everyone sang happy birthday, and I felt like the most special person in the world. My heart beat strongly, full of joy and gratitude. I had never had a party in my entire life. In my parents' house, we barely celebrated birthdays. There wasn't money for these things, you know. The most that happened was my mother making a simple little cake when she could, but my mother's blessing I always received. She always said that a mother's blessing is worth more than any gift, and I believed it. And there I was, with a 3-tiered cake, a pearl necklace on my neck that shone every time I moved, and all those dear people around, simple, hard-working people, but who were there, happy for me. I felt truly important for the first time in my life. It was then that Thaddeus surprised me again. After they finished singing Happy Birthday, he cleared his throat, calling everyone's attention. With a broad smile on his face and his hand on my shoulder, he announced, "Folks, I have more good news to give. I'm going to be a father again." My goodness, it was a party within the party. Everyone came to hug us, to congratulate us. The women already started giving advice, telling me what I should eat, how to take care of myself. The men gave little pats on Thaddeus's back, making jokes. It was already getting dark when the guests began to leave. I stayed helping Mrs. Gwendoline put things away, even though she insisted I didn't need to. She saved a piece of cake especially for me to eat the next day, saying that since I was pregnant, hunger was doubled. And speaking of pregnancy, it was strange to think that after so much time living together, now I was really going to be a mother. Thaddeus couldn't contain himself with happiness, but I noticed that from time to time, he would become thoughtful with a distant look. One day, he came to speak to me, all cautious. "Winnie, I'm afraid. What if something happens to you or the baby?" I perfectly understood his concern. After all, he had already gone through that tragedy with Evangeline. I did what I could to calm him. I said everything would be fine, that I was as strong as an oak tree. The months passed and my belly grew. Thaddeus always came home from work, and came straight to give me a kiss and talk to my belly. It was such a beautiful scene that even today I get emotional remembering it. When I was 4 months pregnant, something very bad happened. It was a hot September afternoon. I was in the kitchen helping Mrs. Gwendeline make sorghum syrup that I had been craving. The telephone rang and she went to answer it. Then she came running, all flustered. "Mrs. Blackwood, telephone for you. It's your brother Quentin." I ran to the office, my heart in my mouth. In those days, telephone was a rare thing, only used in emergencies. When I heard Quentin's voice, I immediately felt something was wrong. He was crying, barely able to speak. "Winnie," he said between sobs, "Dad beat Mom again. This time it was bad. She's been bedridden for 2 days. She can't get up. We don't know what to do." I was in shock. My mother in bed because of that damn man. Quentin continued talking. He said that he and my other brothers had gotten together and given Dad a beating, sending him away for good. Dad had left, but was looking around the house, saying he would kill everyone. When I hung up the phone, I was trembling like a green stick. I even sat down. My legs were very weak. I paced back and forth, not knowing what to do. I promised my brother I would wait for my husband to arrive to take some action. When Thaddeus came home from work, I ran to tell him. His eyes widened with concern. "Winnie," he said, holding my hands, "I understand what's happening, but this trip is too long for you to make while pregnant." But I insisted. It was my mother. I needed to see her. Thaddeus, seeing that I wouldn't settle down, decided that we would leave the next day. Before the sun even rose, we hit the road. The Cadillac was all fixed up, almost like a nest. Thaddeus had put soft pillows for me to be comfortable, thinking of my little belly that was beginning to grow. Mrs. Gwendoline, a loving person, prepared a well-stocked basket for the trip. There was a bit of everything: fresh fruits, buttered bread, each wrapped in a separate napkin, even some spoon bread that she knew I loved. The trip was one of those tests of patience, you know? In those days, good roads were a rare thing. It was all dirt, full of holes and dust. Each bump the car gave, I felt my stomach turn. Poor Thaddeus drove very slowly, his eyes divided between the road and me. Every now and then he would ask, "Are you all right, Winnie? Want me to stop for a bit?" And stopping was what we did most, my child. This pregnancy left me with a bladder the size of a pea. It was such a business of stopping at every gas station, every little store by the roadside. There was a time when there wasn't time to find a decent place. I had to hide behind some bushes with Thaddeus standing guard, red as a pepper with so much embarrassment. We laughed about it afterward, but at the time, it was quite a desperation. In the middle of the trip, between one stop and another, my head was racing. I thought about my poor mother, everything she must have gone through all these years. The longing tightened my chest, mixed with a terrible fear of what I would find when we arrived. When we finally arrived in the little town where I was born, it was as if time had gone backward. My heart almost came out of my mouth when I saw those familiar streets. I was so close. The simple little houses with their wooden windows, the clotheslines full of clothes in the yards, the little white Methodist church where I was baptized, everything there seeming like it hadn't changed at all. But when we arrived at my parents' house, I immediately felt that something wasn't right. Quentin, my youngest brother, came to greet us at the gate when he heard the noise of the car. His eyes were swollen, red from so much crying. He hugged me tightly as if I were a lifeline, then greeted Thaddeus with a respectful handshake, but without much conversation. That's when he dropped the bomb. "Winnie, we had to take Mom to the hospital. She wasn't holding up with so much pain." At that moment, I swear I felt the ground disappear from under my feet. I almost died from my heart. We rushed to the hospital, Thaddeus holding my hand tightly the entire drive. When we arrived, I found my mother lying in bed, her face almost unrecognizable from the bruises. But what struck me most was not her physical state, but the light that still burned in her eyes when she saw me. A mother's love that no amount of abuse could extinguish. "My daughter," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "You came." I couldn't hold back my tears as I gently embraced her, my growing belly pressed against the edge of the hospital bed, a stark contrast of new life against the fragility of hers. In that moment, surrounded by pain and hope, I made a silent vow to break the cycle. My child would know only love, never fear. My dear friends, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to my story today. Looking back on the journey I've been through, from a 14-year-old girl entering an arranged marriage to a woman who found true love and the strength to break the cycle of domestic violence, I want to share one thing with you. Life never goes exactly as we plan, but every challenge brings an opportunity to grow and to find happiness in unexpected ways. When I looked into my mother's eyes in the hospital that day, with my child growing inside me, I made a vow. My child would only know love, not fear. That is the message I want to leave with you. Never let the past define your future, and be brave enough to break painful cycles in order to create a new beginning. If you enjoyed my story, please subscribe to the Grandparents Memories channel so you won't miss other emotional and inspiring stories from our generation. Every subscription and like not only supports the channel but also helps spread these valuable life lessons from the past to more people. I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the founder of Grandparents Memories for inviting me to share my life story. This truly is a wonderful platform to connect generations and preserve the precious memories of our lives.